Hey there! Today I'll be giving a quick crash course on some of Create 8.3's Redstone components. You can see all the components I'll be covering today on the screen, and the reason I picked these specific items for episode 1 is because these are the ones I've learned to use so far. And I also think that these nicely fit in the category of Redstone. In a lot of ways, these components can be used to make vanilla Redstone more compact and more powerful. So let's go ahead and get started. The first item we're going to cover is the power toggle latch, which is a lever, essentially. You can flick it on and off like a regular lever, but you can also send a signal to the front side that will turn it off, and then another signal is going to turn it on. In other words, this is a T flip-flop, which would end up being a lot bigger if built with vanilla Minecraft Redstone pieces. So this is actually a very useful component, and it can go in a lot of Minecraft vanilla machines to make them a lot smaller. So let me show you this use case here where I placed a block above, and what this does is it's going to give us a number of inputs into this T flip-flop, which would basically work with a real T flip-flop, but as you see, this allows for very compact contraptions because any button that I press on the side here is generating a signal, and there's some buffer protection, so if it gets a bunch of signals in a row, it's not going to trigger. So this is actually a very advanced T flip-flop. Moving on, I have a very simple variation here with a torch, and it really isn't different in this case because even though it's powered on by default, the default state is what you pick. You can just flick the lever in the middle and that will be your default state. But having a torch like this is always a good option, and I wanted to show you that the lever responds to it because that will give you a lot more possibilities when building redstone contraptions. As for this is a very simple setup to show you that you can put a simple line of redstone and it will trigger it the same way as the torch and a block placed along the side. And finally, I have an observer, which I think is an interesting block that works very well with Create, but in this case, it doesn't do that much. As you see, if I press the button, the right side is doing exactly the same thing as the left side, except one tick later. So I don't think that's very useful, but let me know if I'm wrong. So this is all for the powered toggle latch. Let's go ahead and move on to the powered latch. So the powered latch is only slightly different from the powered toggle latch. And the only difference is that you press the button here sending a signal through the front and that turns on the latch, and then a signal from the side is the only way you can turn it off, which means you can't toggle it. If you keep pressing the same button over and over, the state is not going to change. It has to come from the other side. And this actually was something that I used a lot in my contraptions. I actually used it in my 7-segment display, which made it a lot more compact than vanilla redstone. As you see here, we can have a lot of inputs by using the block method like I used with the powered toggle latch. And so this way we can put a bunch of buttons on all sides, and that allows us for very compact contraptions compared to having to build a circuit that does exactly this with vanilla redstone, even though it's absolutely possible perhaps with a piston or two and a redstone block. Now I have this torch set up to show you that it can be very interesting, and this setup can be applied to the powered toggle latch as well, is when you have a lever or the lever represents a continuous input of redstone, you can actually turn off the redstone torch, which switches this from being a regular button to a latch. So if the torch is on, if the lever is off, this thing is working like a button. When you press the button, it comes on and it turns off and then it turns back on, or you can obviously reverse that. But if the lever is on, that becomes a completely different function. So just by adding a lever or a continuous redstone signal, that became a much more powerful feature. And the redstone here is acting exactly the same way, nothing special. And as far as the observer, there's not much special things happening here either. As you see, when I press the button, it looks as if there isn't much that the observer is doing other than delaying the signal, because this circuit specifically doesn't accept 2 signals in a row, so the observer isn't really doing much. So that's it for the powered latch. Let's go ahead and move on to the pulse repeater. As the name indicates, the pulse repeater is going to output a pulse with a signal strength of 15 whenever it receives any kind of redstone signal. So as you see, the lamp flashes on and off and then nothing else happens. In this next setup here, I have a piston which is going to spit out its block because it's receiving a 1-tick input. This is pretty cool because normally this needs to be a little bit bigger, so I think this will help a lot of people build doors and compact contraptions. And if you want to prevent the block from being spit out, you just need to add a repeater with 1-tick setup on it. So this way you're going to get this really fast extension and retraction of the piston. And I'm pretty sure it's faster than normal. And this is why I put a button here on the side to show you. The piston remains extended for the duration of the button, but here it still gets a quick pulse, just not quick enough to spit the block. And finally, I have this observer set up here, which is where things start to get interesting, because the observer not only sees the pulse that comes out of the repeater, but also sees the light inside the repeater while it's being powered on by a button or by any type of redstone signal. So we're getting two outputs here, but you see if we're going to destroy this repeater and turn it to the side, pointing into that lamp over there, and press this button, the observer is still going to see everything and going to give you the same output while the lamp is giving you a single pulse. I think this is pretty useful and can be applied in a lot of cases, but this is everything for the pulse repeater. Let's go ahead and move to the adjustable repeater. The adjustable repeater doesn't work exactly as it's named, because even though it delays a signal and it works as a repeater, it also works as a pulse extender somehow. So first of all, you adjust it by pointing at it and scrolling with your mouse scroll button. Is it a scroll button? You scroll and then you change the number and you can go all the way to 30 minutes. Now, as you see, it's delaying the signal by 2 seconds here, but the lamp is also staying on for 2 seconds. And to prove it to you, I'm going to turn this up to 5 seconds, and you'll see that it's going to take a bit longer for the lamp to come on, but then as soon as it comes on, it stays on for a long time. I don't know if this is intentional, but honestly, I love it, and I already have a bunch of ideas to use it because pulse extenders are usually big and they don't look good and they don't fit in compact contraptions. So this is going to come in real handy very soon. Now to show you, it actually does the same thing as a repeater, but it also still operates as a pulse extender. So if you want a piston to extend later and also remain extended for a long amount of time, this is the piece for you. As you see, if I press it, it's going to take that amount of time, and then the piston comes on, and then it stays on for exactly that amount of time, and then it retracts. So with this, the observer setup gets even more interesting because above 2 seconds, I think, let's set it to 2 seconds, which I believe we're going to have the behavior that we expect is just noticing what's happening 4 times. There is this powering on, and then it powers off, and then that side powering on and powering off. So what this is doing is sending 4 signals through to the observer while actually sending 2 redstone outputs. So if we flip this to the side, we can actually see that. But first, well, yeah, let's see. If it's on 2 seconds, the lamp should only flash once after 2 seconds, while the piston is going to fire 4 times. This is very interesting. I don't know how it can be used, but it's definitely a complex contraption in a small space. So if you have any ideas for how this can be used, I would be happy to hear about them. Now let's go ahead and move on to the adjustable pulse repeater. Now, the adjustable pulse repeater actually does exactly what the name suggests. It delays a pulse, and then after the amount of time specified on the board, it sends a single pulse no matter what kind of redstone you're sending into it. So if there is a piston, it's going to spit out the block only after the amount of time specified. So it works exactly like the pulse repeater, except you add the time that you specify on it. And so the same way, if we add a repeater with 1 tick added to it, you'll see that we'll get this really fast extension and retraction of the piston without spitting out the block. And next, I'm going to show you what I did with the observer with this guy, because the setup and the effect here is very interesting. As you see, if we have it set to 1 second, we're going to get a very normal output. We're going to get 2 outputs. And then if we set it to 2 seconds or anything above, we start to get an extra output. And if you're wondering why that is, it's because of the same reason that we saw the previous observers behaving differently. And that is that they see what happens even on the inputs of these repeaters. So if we switch this to the side, what is going to happen is that a signal is going to go into the lamp, sending 1 pulse, but then the observer can be set to behave with those 2 different ways. If we have it set to 1 second, you'll see it acting like a button. And then if we increase the time here, it's going to take more than these actions. Now here's a feature that all of these items have in common. All of these blocks that we looked at can take power out of soft powered blocks, which means that if you have a line of redstone running up like this, everything under there is going to be powered, and then you can also run redstone above it and everything. So if I power this latch on, you see everything coming on, and you can run the redstone over there. So that's it for all these latches. Let's go ahead and move on to the adjustable lever. The adjustable lever is nice in that you can get a variable signal strength without using comparators. And you basically right click it to increase the signal, and you can take it from 0 all the way to 15. And if you want to bring it back, you need to crouch and right click it, but also make sure that your hand is empty, because you can turn it up while something is in your hand, but you can't turn it down. Even if it's a Create 0.3 extendo grip or anything like that, it'll look like it's stuck. So empty your hands and you'll be able to bring it back to the beginning. And to better illustrate what this does, as you'll see, 1 tick is going to give us 1 lamp and then 2 lamps. And we can skip a bunch of lamps by clicking and holding. So this is really useful and can be used with signal strength decoders, which if you're not familiar with, you can check out my video, which I'll link in the description, where I built one using this and Redstone links, which we'll go to right now. And now we're on to my absolute favorite thing about Create 0.3 so far, which is the Redstone Link. Each Redstone Link has 2 boxes which say frequency 1 and frequency 2, and I like to remember that frequency 1 is right next to the antenna. Now all of these Redstone Links right here are just placed because I wanted to show you how everything works. So we're going to place buttons next to these, which are going to be our transmitters, and everything over there is going to be the receiver. So I'm going to set these up with frequency 1 with 4 different colors. But before we move on from that, I want to tell you real quick that there are a couple of variations that you can achieve with these Redstone Links. So these 2 blocks aren't actually offering you anything related to redstone. They're basically the frequencies that you're going to send. So this is a different frequency, this is a different frequency, and this is also a different frequency, which means that you can, if you have 1 block, you can have 3 different combinations. And if you have 2 blocks, now you have a bunch of other different combinations. I believe that would be 8 combinations. So this allows you to produce signals without conflict and to make sure that everything has a unique signal, considering that we have a ton of Minecraft blocks. So each one of these right now is sending a unique signal. Let's go ahead to the other side, and we'll work with these guys, where if you crouch and right click is going to change into a receiver, and you'll see that little white circle appear. Now, this is only going to work if your hands are completely empty. I had a hard time trying to figure out how to do this when my inventory was full and I had something in my hand. So you see, in this case, it builds, and if it's a create component or a button, it's not going to do anything. Even if it's the extendo grip, it doesn't work for me. My hand has to be empty. So we're going to set these to orange receivers so that we can power on the latches that I placed behind that wall. by pressing this one button. So we're going to do other things with the other redstone links. So as you see, both of these latches are on, and one of these is a toggle latch. The other one is a powered latch, which, as you see, one of them, the toggle latch is now off, and the other one stays on because it will only turn off with an input from the side, which is why I have this block with all these redstone links on it. And as you see, there's even one on the bottom, which makes this really awesome. This is basically what I built my 7-segment display based on, because you can activate a certain redstone component with a bunch of different signals. So as you see here, the latch turned off because I powered the purple one, but if I have any other color set to that side, that means I can turn off that latch with any type of different signal that I sent. Basically, I can turn it off from different places, so this allows you to control the same circuit from multiple locations. So all you need to remember about the Redstone Link is that you need to keep the frequencies unique so that you don't accidentally trigger other contraptions or other parts of the circuit. You need to keep your hands empty while you're crouching and right-clicking to make sure that you set the contraption or the Redstone Link as a receiver. And I'm hoping that this is enough to let you use the Redstone Link and enjoy all its power. So now it's time to move on to the Redstone Contact. The Redstone Contact is a simple block that outputs a signal whenever it's touching another redstone contact. So if you have one and you put another one facing it this way, you'll see that it starts to generate a redstone signal. What's cool about these is that they can be pushed by pistons and by all sorts of movement features, and while they're moving, they're going to be able to trigger other redstone contacts that are sitting along the way. So as you see, I have this latch here just to show you that we have a little T flip-flop that works in a little bit more granular way. So this is it for the Redstone Contact. Let's go ahead and move to the content observers and filters. Now, while the content observer might classify a little bit differently than these guys, I feel like it works a little bit too similar to a hopper to be skipped. What this thing does is it detects a block in there based on the filter that you put in it, and if there's no filter, it's gonna give a redstone signal for anything in the box, but the signal strength does not get affected. Now, as you see, since we have white wool in the filter, the content observer is only responding to white wool. If we remove or put back the red wool, nothing is happening, but when there's white wool in the chest, it's outputting a signal strength of 15. I think this is pretty cool and it's extremely useful, and I already have used it to build some cool contraptions that you can see the links below in the description. Now here, I want to show you with a couple of items how to use filters, because those take these things and all of Create.3's filters to the next level. All you have to do is hold the filter up and right-click in the air. Now as you see, I already have a few items in there that I want to filter for, and all you need to do is click the item or drag it and drop it in there, and you have a couple of options with the regular filter. You can pick the allow or deny list, and if you have an allow list, these are the items that will be detected. If you do deny, it will detect anything except for them. And then with data, while it doesn't apply here, there are certain things. If items have certain attributes with them, they will be respected, like something that can be cooked or can be smelted, etc. Now, if you right-click here and place the filter, now this is going to respond exactly how we programmed it. So if I place any of these blocks in there, and let me break this so we can see. If I place any of these blocks, a signal is going to be given. And I want you to pay attention to the word any. This means that if I take any of them out, all of them are in, it's still generating a signal. And so we can actually get even more granular by going to our attribute filter. So let me take some things out from here, or actually let's take everything out and go set up an attribute filter. And the same way, we start by holding the attribute filter up in the air and then right-clicking. And now we'll see a slightly more complicated filter window. So let's go ahead and add something, and I'll start with this cooked chicken, and we can put it here, and this on the right there will be a list of all the attributes available, and we can scroll to select any one of them. So you can say that it's just food or it's a vanilla Minecraft block, but let's pick that it can be eaten. And I'm going to do something interesting here. So you hit the plus button, obviously, to add it to your list of rules, or you can add the opposite, which, we say it can't be eaten. So now we added it, and we're going to keep it on the allow list. And now I would like to add another thing. So since we added it and there's a number 1 down there, I can remove this item, and then I can bring my raw chicken and then see what attributes are available here. Now, it's funny because I can say can be smelted, which will mean that it will also accept iron ore. But because the other one says that it can be eaten, we're only going to be accepting edible food. And now because we say it can be smoked, we told it that we can only accept raw food, even though we used a cooked chicken in the first one. So it gives you a simple example of how you can apply attributes and how they can contradict each other or complement each other. And now we obviously right click, and as you see, the cooked chicken does nothing, but the raw chicken triggers it. So there are obviously better ways of doing this. For example, with the filter, if we just want to check for chicken, this is going to, we can just put the raw chicken in there and it's going to find out. But if we want to check for all raw food, this is a pretty good filter. And believe it or not, this concludes the tutorial. But before I let you go, I have 2 more useful pieces of information that you can use to improve your Create.3 experience. The first one is the fact that I'm using this awesome mod called Just Enough Items, which show you cooking recipes or crafting recipes for anything you have. And since create items are very hard to find information on, right here you can find all of these items and point at any of them, and then you can click the item and it will give you the crafting recipe completely detailed on the side. And if you click on any of these items, it's going to show you further how you craft that item. In addition, and this is how I learned most of what I know about Create, is the Shift and Control buttons. Anything that has features in Create has a ton of information included right here in your inventory. If you point at it and you hold the Shift button, it's going to give you a bunch of information. And almost everything has a lot of useful information, if not everything that you need. Some of them have both Shift and Control and is going to tell you that, and a lot of times the Control is going to show you any kind of interaction with the right mouse button and that kind of stuff. But honestly, I would not have been able to use Create without that, and I think it's awesome. I'm wondering sometimes if a lot of people who want the wiki also haven't seen this feature. So I highly recommend that you read everything in detail before you use it, because there are a lot of good information on there. And now that I've said all of this, and I know that I have talked so much, and this is probably the longest video I've ever made, I really hope that you enjoyed it and that you at least learned something useful from it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.